All right, so I wanted to make this video because I wanted to discuss the Submarine. Recently, Wargaming put out a dev blog that was highlighting the stats of the sub, both the American and the German submarines, and their effectiveness related to all the other classes, and it wasn't good, guys. It's got a low amount of damage output, low spotting, low potential damage. You know, pretty much if you had a stat, it was low on it. About the only thing that the submarine could do well was survive longer than a DD on average, but it just wasn't being effective. So Wargaming has decided to rotate them off of random battle testing in 11.0, and they won't come back until at least 11.2. Now, the submarine it's gone through so many changes, but the general design of the submarine as it stands right now is there's a dumbfire and then a homing. The homing requires that you set it up with sonar. The dumbfire does not. So as you might imagine, it's in your best interest to use dumbfire without announcing your presence. So that's one thing that I think made Wargaming, it made it an easier decision for Wargaming to decide to take them off the server. Because, you know, honestly, they're just kind of broken. There's just not really a reason to use sonar right now. It doesn't give you enough benefit. You really only want to use sonar if you absolutely have to. You know, maybe countering an enemy submarine, you need that homing. Then yes, you would obviously use it in that. But the majority of the time, you are dumbfire all the time. So it's very fascinating that they've moved this far away from the homing. I personally don't like the homing. I feel like it is a low skill ability. You know, it would have been more interesting if the homing aspect was coupled with other, you know, roles that the sub had to do. But as it stands right now, there's not really, you know, like multiple roles that the sub has to do. The sub pretty much just fulfills the DD role. And it just does it in a way that is slow, like a less effective DD role. So yeah, that's the current issue with the submarine. Its unique trait, the sonar homing mechanic, is underpowered compared to the dumbfire, and the dumbfire makes them play very similarly to like a forward launching DD, which just isn't very effective. If that's all you're going to do, you know, you have reduced consumable options. Obviously, you know, the submarine can't detect when it's underwater. So the underwater formula is really there for like, you know, giving yourself a area where you can hide. It's not really something that you want to do consistent damage from, you know? And to me, I think that the homing going away needed to happen. Obviously, attacking from underwater and homing the torpedo up to the target, there's very little counterplay potentially there. Pretty much the only counterplay is some type of dodging or a or damage control to avoid the homing. So, you know, that's one aspect of the sub that doesn't work. The other aspect, honestly, that doesn't work is sub versus sub. Now, this is something that, you know, the carrier deals with, and it's a negative on the carrier. The carriers basically are encouraged not to go after each other in the way that the game rewards them. So submarines are kind of in that same area right now. So, you know, there's multiple things that Wargaming needs to potentially address with the sub design to bring them more incorporate into the game. So that's why they're rotating them back. So to me, the areas where they suck, mirror matchups, and team support. Those are the two areas where the submarine is at the bottom compared to all the other ships. So I think that one of the things that wargaming should do is focus on making them more fun to play against themselves. So the sub game is kind of awkward. You have a resource, dive capacity, that is used when you're spotted. So in the situation where you're playing against a submarine, you will potentially have to spot the enemy and then be spotted. So that leads to a lot of situations where you're not as effective as you wish you were because you're too busy trying to avoid all of the mechanics that punish being spotted, you know, whether it's keeping you detected or activating radar or using hydroacoustic or using anti-submarine. You know, there's a huge amount of mechanics that go behind that. So, you know, from the standpoint of the subs, I think that it's cool that there is counterplay in detection, but I think that it's more like it's like throwing enough stuff at a wall to see if it sticks. It's not because it's effective. You just have a lot of it. And I kind of feel like that's the counter design that they've implemented, and I don't think that that's really healthy for the future. But going on the submarine topic, sub versus sub combat. It's really awkward to try and detect your opponent and also not be detected. And to have that resource be sacrificed to have the target detected, you know, it just doesn't really work well. It kind of is finicky and awkward. That would be my description for sub versus sub combat. Awkward and not really refined. So the things that I think that they could easily do to make the submarine more enjoyable to play against itself is offer more options for the player to counter. Obviously, the torpedoes on the surface work very well, as you can see. So that's good. I like the dumbfire. I think the dumbfire works, but in the sub versus sub gameplay, you pretty much have to land a sonar ping on a spotted sub, send your homing torpedo at the target while being detected most of the time, and through the detection, survive and not waste too much and kill the sub. So instead of that being like the way the sub is played against itself, I propose that they make changes on how the submarine fights itself. Instead of like detecting each other and forcing each other to be detected, I think it would work so much better if the submarines would sort of go into a different world. Their world, you could interact with it, certainly, but you couldn't interact with it on the level that you can currently. And, you know, it would be the same for the submarine. The submarine would use the underwater to fight itself, but any submarine that's underwater, maybe there's not a direct positional information that's shared like it is currently, or maybe there's specific situations where it would be shared and where it wouldn't be. But the sub gameplay, I think, needs to be more towards like sending a skill shot out and having the player either hide their position, either by slowing down, you know, because if you think about submarine warfare in real life and in movies, they generally go with the idea that a submarine is silent unless it's moving and doing things, and then it's really loud to the point where it would draw attention to itself. Well, maybe that's the way that the submarine can work against itself. My theory is, instead of a sonar ping with a follow-up homing torpedo, what if the submarine had acoustic torpedoes that would automatically home on enemy submarines that made too much noise? So that this would be a mechanic that the submarine player could get comfortable with. You know, it's kind of like slowing down to deploy smoke. That's the concept that I'm thinking about here when I'm thinking about the sub versus sub gameplay. Is that there would be some way for the player to recognize that there is an acoustic ping and to either drop like a decoy buoy or something like that, or just adjust their positioning or their speed to not have the sub cavitate or anything like that. You know, like the normal conditional that we're used to. I think they should definitely decide to, you know, bring that into the game, because I think that that makes sense. That makes sense that a class that could theoretically hide completely, that's their whole like shtick, is that they're built to hide. So that's what I would like them to potentially explore, is that they have a great repertoire of like the dumbfire is fun, but I just don't feel like it's fun to play against other subs. So I would personally evolve the playstyle forward to be more of a hunt and to have multiple tools to counter your opponent. That's personally where I think the sub gameplay needs to evolve to. I would love some type of like decoys in the water, decoy in the water, to cause the acoustic torpedo to, you know, go off. You could obviously drop this, and maybe there would be, oh shit, I didn't even realize I was running the island here.
Hull breach. We're taking on water quickly.
But yeah, so I would evolve the sub versus sub, be more about silent and you know, manipulating your audio for the other to hear. So the reason why I wanted to go that route is because I currently feel like Hydrophone doesn't really work. There's like a 5-minute penalty at the start. So basically submarines are encouraged not to go after each other. Sound familiar, guys? Carriers are encouraged not to go after each other. Oh god, here we go. Sub versus sub, right here, baby.
The enemy is about to dead ahead. Torpedoes, direct front. Problem solved, sir. We're holed below the waterline. We're flooding quickly.
Ah, it's just so punishing. Just so punishing. The way the sub is played, it's so annoying to me that so many people can affect me, and I can't affect them. Like, I get it. It sucks. I just think that wargaming needs to look at the submarine as a weapon platform and decide how are they going to be valuable. I really like the dumbfire mechanically. I think that it plays well. Like, I think that that's the future. I think that the dumbfire, here, let's go to another subgame. I think the dumbfire is the way to go. I think surface ships respect dumbfire. They respect that the dumbfire torpedoes can only be sent pretty much on the surface. That means that any surface ship that is attacked by a submarine can theoretically attack return. You know, it's not a situation where a submarine can sit, you know, like 10 kilometers underwater, 10 kilometers away, 60 meters underwater, so far away from you that you can't affect them with radar or hydroacoustic or your main battery or anti-submarine, but they can still ping you with their homing, right? that doesn't feel good for the surface ship. But the dumbfire definitely has fixed that perception to me. The thing that they need to really embrace is just dropping sonar. This mechanic here, this just doesn't work in the context of dumbfiring. Why would I ever announce my presence to my opponent? You would never do that, but submarines are supposedly designed to do that. So that's, to me, I think just scrap sonar, get rid of it, drop the homing torpedoes and make it acoustic, and make the homing effect occur based on the target's engine speed or something like that. You know, for instance, if there's a submarine in the water and he is moving forward, the acoustic would maybe potentially pick up on the target's location and go towards the target. And as the target were speeding up or slowing down, the homing would either be more effective or less effective. And there's sort of a break point in the speed that the sub would go that they would basically not register on the acoustic. Even if they would in real life, I think that, you know, just like on the surface, if you're putting out smoke, if you go at 1/4 speed, you won't leave the smoke before the next puff. Well, there should be some type of indicator for the submarine of this mechanic design that he can change his speed underwater to make the acoustic less effective. On top of that, I would really love them to, instead of having sonar be like your number one and then you follow up with a homing torpedo or something like that, instead of sonar being the number one, why not make the hydrophone ability your number one? And instead, it will be available if you are underwater, and it will tell you the location of objects in sort of a loose, last known position. I think that would be fun for both the sub player and the surface ship player, because the surface ship player would hear that audio ping, and, you know, maybe the ping gives you distance, some type of relationship to let the player listen for roughly how far away the sub must be, you know, based on the audio cue. That would give the player the ability to avoid the submarine, but the submarine would not have to be on the surface using his surface spotting to be valuable to his team. He could be valuable in other ways. And in this way, the player would not, you know, get a indication that there is a threat close by, but there would be an audio cue to allow for that sort of counterplay. I think that, you know, giving players more ways to feel comfortable around submarines is going to make them more popular. And I really would like that to be a focus of wargaming with this next update, making submarines more appreciated by their teammates. I would like there to be some type of unique submarine trait that other classes just don't have. Because to me, you know, the submarine is kind of like a sniper, and the DD is kind of like a scout. They can provide similar skills for their team, but one is better than the other at certain things, right? You know, obviously a sniper is going to be better at long-range damage, whereas a scout is probably going to be better at short-range damage. But you have obviously gun systems on DDs that give them extra range. So I think that, you know, go all in on the dumbfire. Long-range sniping, forward launching, really like that. But I think what they could do is, you know, introduce a trait that makes submarines valuable. And I think if I'm thinking about the lore or like the design of submarines, They obviously have a acoustic detection underwater. And it's not like perfect. So I would sort of do that same exact, you know, idea, but in the game. If you were underwater, you could activate your hydrophone in sort of a similar way that the sonar effect occurs. Instead of activating a passive that, you know, projects every 15 seconds, what if you had the ability to activate an ability that gave you intel on the surface, but you couldn't directly target it? You know, it's kind of like, God, what's the effect where the target is spotted on the mini map, but not spotted in the world? That's what I'm envisioning in my head. Is the sub player could position himself within a certain distance of the enemy underwater, and they would activate their hydrophone, and the hydrophone would give a general ping location, but that would be all that would be given to the team. So when I say general ping, like, you know, this Venezia here, if I was underwater, what he could do is it could just be a dot, or, you know, just something to say, okay, well, he's clearly here. But I don't know exactly what is here, right? That's the idea. Nice. Obviously, ooh, hello there. The submarine could hunt another sub. We could do that. Submarine can capture the base. We can do that. But I just think right now the submarine is pretty much outclassed in every way by the DDs. They are faster, they have more torpedoes, they have gun systems, they have more consumables. You know, a DD has literally everything on a submarine. So there's nothing new that the sub can bring right now. That sonar mechanic was supposed to be what? The sonar homing clearly is not popular with the community. So we need to try and, you know, I don't know if they want to do this because I don't know how much money they spent on sonar. But it really just needs to be scrapped. It's not going to work the way that they want. Yeah, but I mean, a Shimakaze has detection at 5.6. Sub can detect, I don't know, can it? I don't think a submarine can detect on the surface, right? Like, if I'm at periscope depth, I'm not supposed to be able to spot for myself. Oh my god. We're just dead. I hate the aircraft carrier for this. But yeah, I think that when they're on the surface, they can detect. At periscope depth, I believe they can't detect. I think they can... Aren't they immune to radar at periscope? Something like that. But yeah, I think that they get rid of the sonar, get rid of the homing, make the torpedo just acoustic, just pick up on a player's speed, make it do a lot less damage. It would effectively exist like a homing torpedo, but it wouldn't require a sonar ping to establish, and the player wouldn't need damage control to throw it off, you know? It'd sort of be inherently built into the ship that if you were to play a certain way, you would cause the acoustic torpedo to miss. I think that plays better than relying on damage control for everything. You could still have damage control be available for dots and stuff like that and equipment, but I just think it's a little too much asking the player to juggle ping, fire, flood, steering, engine, torpedo incapacitation, main battery incapacitation, all on this one thing. Attack from periscope. Okay. Okay. See, I would make it to where the submarine has dumbfire on the surface and a periscope. And when it's underwater, that's when it has its unique mechanic. And get rid of dive capacity. And I would say the reason why I say get rid of dive capacity is because the player cannot attack surface ships without being on the surface and attackable. So if we were to move in that way, there wouldn't be a need to make the player sort of drown so that he can go to the surface. The player would be completely ineffective for the team from a damage standpoint without being on the surface. So if we could get rid of dive capacity, get rid of sonar, change the homing to acoustic, make hydrophone the usable mechanic underwater, and it would be nice. Like, it would basically be underwater line of sight, maybe like 10, 15, 20 kilometers, would give you like a ping. Dive capacity is the battery. I think that in order to encourage submarines to want to play against each other, I think dive capacity and the sonar homing need to be removed. Those are the two things that hold back the sub versus sub gameplay, in my opinion. You know, obviously you don't want to use your dive capacity early on against a submarine locked in a 1 versus 1. But wouldn't that be the most fun theoretical scenario for a submarine, is to go 1 versus 1 on another sub and not feel like the two worlds are colliding? That's where I'm at. I think that separating the worlds and making there not be any overlap would help make both the sub versus sub and then the sub versus surface all balanced more effectively, if they would consider doing that. I just feel like, you know, what's the point of introducing a class into the game if they're not fun to play against each other? Oh, you know what, Rack Savage, I kind of disagree. I feel like the dumbfire torpedo is very much a better design. I really enjoy it. Yeah, see, right now, I can't detect. That's what I thought. Periscope, you cannot detect for yourself.
All stations, concentrate fire on that target.
I would be able to detect the Holland if I could detect. And for some reason, I am under the radar effect, even though I'm at periscope. I guess they haven't implemented that change yet.
I need intelligence data.
Lazy? Then why can't I see the cruiser? In that situation, Lazy, why couldn't I detect the enemy cruiser? Was he outside of his detection range? Because I just hit him with torpedo. Detection strength drops? Yeah. Mm-mm. Yeah, see. No, no. Yeah, periscope doesn't detect. You see that? The Holland should easily have been detected right there. God, there's way too many enemies over here. Yeah, but Lazy, did you literally just watch the screen right there? Because I was at periscope depth and I couldn't detect the Holland even though he was within 4 kilometers of my ship.
Torpedoes to port. Torpedoes to port.
We've sunk an enemy destroyer.